Emily. She's a UI designer who actually started not that long ago here at PGI.
Hey, a few months ago. I'm not too much of a baby now.
True. And she works on Mech 5. And Victor as well. They sit right next to each other.
Yeah, we've got our little corner.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own corner, exactly. How are you?
I'm good.
Hey, Victor, how long have you been here now?
Around 1.5, almost 1.5 years here at Tirana.
Alrighty.
So what are your guys' titles exactly?
UX UI designers.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think UX UI designers and UI artists, we kind of cover both those bases.
So we'll be focusing more on the procedure of UI design rather than the technicalities, I believe.
Technicalities? Yes.
Yes, the word.
That's right.
I like yours better.
I'm here just to make sure that, everyone treats Victor right.
That's right.
Yeah, keep it civil, guys.
All right, I'll open.
Thank you, Russ. I appreciate that.
I'll open the text channel where you guys can ask your questions right now.
Cool.
So here they come. So for you guys, you just have to stay at the very top as best as you can, and I'll check off the ones that you're done.
Good.
Feel free to, when you are about to answer a question, to just give a summary of what they're asking for those who are recording it. They know what you're answering to.
Yeah, sure.
Sounds good.
So real quick before you get started, obviously, sorry, I always get my press the talk button typing somewhere. Obviously, a lot of these questions naturally are going to be very gameplay related. They're going to be asking things that Victor and Emily really just shouldn't be answering, even if they feel like they have some of the information. They're not going to have all of it, and we're really trying to focus in on the creation of the front end, the user interface, and the processes we've used. And a lot of people that come from MWO might have specific questions about the way that front end was in MWO, and asking how it might be better or different in Mechwarrior 5. Will the front end scale, and some of the things that we don't have in Mechwarrior 9. Those are obvious and good questions. If it's going to be about how storytelling is going to happen through the front end, or how the HUD cockpit is going to map and for gameplay reasons into the cockpit of the mech, Victor and Emily are not the right people to answer those types of questions. So basically, you feel free to just skip over a question. Just say that's not something that we're qualified to answer. We can answer that at a different AMA. Or if you feel like there's an element of the question you can answer, like a particular aspect of, well, here's how we create elements in the HUD for the cockpit, and then just kind of leave it at that, and the rest of the question goes unanswered, that can work as well. So anyhow, good luck, guys. I'll just be listening in, and here we go.
Yeah, sure thing. Would I be able to start with Force's question there, because I think it's quite an interesting one for UI designers. They asked, Force asked, will weapon quirks be listed in different colors in the UI for legibility and color blindness, etc.? And I'd want to start out saying that we want to try and gear the UI as much as we can to be good for everybody, especially when it comes to color blindness. It's something that's really important to consider when designing in general. So we are doing our best, I think, for that. And we want to try and make sure it is fun for everybody.
So it's not just I wish someday we could get to that like it is in MWO, but we've been thinking about it from the ground up kind of thing, which is, I think, the the message they'd like to hear about on that.
UAV activated. New target acquired.
Snake509 asks, what is your favorite part of the UI development? I think personally my favorite part of it, at least coming onto the team relatively recently, is that as UI designers, we get a lot of chances to really show off other people's work. There's a ton of art in the game, and a ton of like really, really cool, beautiful content. And when you're a UI designer, you can really help drive showcasing a lot of that stuff as much as possible. Really was my philosophy going into this, because there's so much cool visual content in the game. So that's probably my favorite part for this project personally. How about you, Victor?
Yeah, I can answer that question too. I was thinking about what's my favorite part of the process. I would say the favorite part of the process would be definitely inspiration and creation and basically iterating everything visually, even if it's not for the final definition of the game, but definitely for visual understanding of everything, if that makes sense.
Force asks, what is the coolest icon you've had to design? What's the hardest one you've had to design? There's been some really interesting visual language for this game, because we have a lot of military references and background and all those sorts of things. Because there's a lot of icon design in the world already, in regards to the cool military mecha type stuff. So some of the more fun things that we've gotten to do is take a look at the visual language and how it relates to mechs. Things like their structure or health and stuff like that, and trying to associate it all the time with the same kinds of imagery. And that's been one of the it's very hard to do that, but I think a very fruitful labor essentially. And Victor, you'd be able to speak a lot on that because you've had lots to do with developing the visual icon language that we're using right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about that all day. I spent more like 4 months designing every single icon for the game. And yeah, basically, we still short on that because we need to design more and more and more iconography for that. But basically, we want to keep it visually simple, visually readable, and clear for everything that we will make. TBC Nathaniel is asking how much inspiration from the previous mech games is taken when making the UI and which games. I would say we have a lot of inspiration. We've been doing a lot of research on basically everything that it's related to Mech and Mechwarrior. So expect fun and clarity.
Target destroyed.
Inter-S, will most interactive elements be larger / easier to click than Mechwarrior Online's razor-shaped 12-pixel tall buttons? I'm going to kind of relate this to a larger question in that a lot of Mechwarrior's UIs over the years they're very busy UIs. There's a lot going on, and they're often really you have to learn quite a bit before you can easily use them. And I can say that at least what we're trying to aim for a design that is welcoming to people that may have potentially not used them before, or people that are experienced using them. And our buttons are nice and big, I guess. So I hope that's for the better. Not actually meta asks, is the UI generally presented as in-game interfaces when possible, I guess, or purely as menus? I mean, a lot of people, when they think of UI, I think they often think of the actual, like, the mech HUD. But obviously with games, there's a lot more than that. We have to go through a lot of menus, a lot of windows. There's a lot of stuff that is not necessary. It doesn't necessarily exist in the game world. But trying to bridge the gap between those two things and make it feel really, really natural and good looking. Like I mentioned before, showcasing as much art as we can. And it gives it a little bit more of a feeling of being an in-game interface, or an in-universe interface, I guess I could say, something that feels sort of HUD and real world-esque, but still functions the way that you would efficiently need it as a user.
Lone Wolf, aka Init the Mierda guy, is asking, will the UI be based on MWO, or are you just redesigning the UI for MW5? It's a completely new concept for MW5. There's nothing to do with MWO.
Yeah, we're hoping that the game will have a unique feeling, certainly, for sure. Snake 509 asks, what is the most difficult of the UI design process? I guess this is probably different for both of us. For me personally, I find a lot of UI is instinct based. When you're navigating through games, oftentimes it's important that you don't feel the UI that you're in. It's important you immediately know where everything is. Maybe there's a few, kind of like higher usability things that as you get more experience with the interface, you grow faster with it and know a bit more of its capabilities. But to try and get that initial as natural as possible feeling, you don't think about it when you would experience it. So trying to design that, you have to start to become very aware of the games that you play and the interfaces that you experience. You can't just breeze through them anymore. You have to be very conscious and then pull a lot of those designs and find interesting iterations or more efficient things, or try not to reinvent the wheel, but make the wheel better, I guess.
That is totally correct. I agree with Emily, and everything is nothing is new under the sun, but there's a lot of ways to make it better.
I'm gonna I see one here that's pretty cool. Griffin, will all UI elements be available in third person, not like in MWO? I don't know if I can speak to all, but I think so. I think the answer is yes. So Mechwarrior 5, as we've mentioned, will definitely have, because it is a PvE game, we don't have some of the same hangups. And you can imagine when you're walking through, a city garrison and smashing through buildings, there's a lot of really cool stuff to see in third person. So it will have a very functional and fully developed third person camera. And you do get to see your, HUD and reticles and targeting and all the kind of stuff that you need to properly play in third person. So yes, I'm not sure if it's all, but I think it might be all. Certainly most everything.
I can say right underneath that, Nerve Rock, what are some of the big differences from MechWarrior Online to MechWarrior 5? I can speak at least for UI, kind of like the game feel and stuff like that. It's a much more, you feel really like you're in a mech. It has a heavier feeling in general. You feel a lot more kind of weighted, I guess, when it comes to piloting. Would be one of the differences between MechWarrior Online and MechWarrior 5. So it's got it's got a lot of game feel, I guess.
Yeah, I want to add on that question. What are some of the big difference from MWO to MW5? Definitely, yeah. The game is smoother, but I'm not sure if Nervok is asking some visual differences or more like gameplay difference. I can talk about the visual difference. Definitely, there's a big difference in MWO where we use the panels or sliding panels when they are sliding from the left to the right, or buttons or everything like that. And in MW5, we're not using any panels. We're just like using floating elements, and that makes the readability and the usability and the fun more engaging.
Orcurist 86 asks, what has been the hardest aspect of building on the lo-fi industrial aesthetic of the setting while keeping the UI modern? And I think some of the influence, at least for trying to keep things modern, trying to keep it clean and make a good, a good looking modern UI, but still having a lot of sort of that military industrial feel. Like I talked about a little bit before, the a lot of the icon design having influences from the modern military and stuff like that. It kind of gives us a lot of opportunities to use those sorts of chunky elements, but then keep a lot of the simple stuff, the stuff that you don't see, the stuff that you don't think about, that you just want to breeze through. That a lot of those can be very, very modern looking, so it gives us a good military feel with sort of a modern backdrop.
Yeah, definitely, and we have a lot of I would say documentation and inspiration from military documentation, which takes us a long time to iterate and to try and to prototype on that. Um, Force is asking, can we change the UI color in game or only through mods? Uh, Basically, one of the ideas that we have is the accessibility is not going to be a problem, and we're not going to switch or toggle anything for color blindness. That is given in the UI, and we are basically iterating a lot in color palettes, so everything will be basically very accessible.
UAV activated. New target acquired.
Jaden Hayes asks, will the weapon color coding of Mechwarrior Online's MechLab stay the same? With yellow for energy weapon, purple for ballistics, green for missiles. I think we're fairly close in our coding. We're not identical though, because we're trying to, like Victor said, do a lot of work to try and get things visible for color blindness of because both types and those sorts of things. So I think there's a few small variations, but in general, we're trying to preserve a lot of the tradition of some of the kind of UI rules that Mechwarrior has established over the years.
Target acquired.
It's hard to remember if those are things that we established with MWO, if they were established before.
Fuel at 25%. Target destroyed. Target acquired.
Yeah, I agree.
Black Spectre asks, how strict have you been on avoiding intrusive UI? Well, I guess it depends on what you'd consider to be an intrusive UI. We're doing one of the most challenging and also one of the most fun and rewarding parts of designing the UI for something like this is that we want to try and make things as good looking as possible, as usable as possible, and as intuitive as possible. Those are all the really important things. On top of visual language and comfortable layouts and stuff like that. A lot of art showcasing. So we try and keep a lot of our designs focused on that good-looking showcasing, but while still being efficient, easy to filter, since we've got lots of menus and lots of things to work with that have a lot of content in them. So trying to make it as easy as possible for a user to go through, select what they basically get what they want to get done. While still looking good and being fast. So I rather than strict, I'd say that is one of our main focuses, is to make it as natural as possible to use. And if you're talking about HUD for mechs and stuff like that, we want to make sure that it feels as immersive as possible as an experience. So it's never going to be the UI that gets in the way in combat. That's obviously super important to us. So.
Oh, Vlado Capu is asking, will there be a different indication for a gun that's jammed, out of ammo, or destroyed? Yes, the answer is yes, in the HUD.
Yes, that seems important. How many layers of UI will there be as Force? Basically, there's a design philosophy that never have UI elements go deeper than one or two layers. Yep, that's just a good design philosophy, so the user doesn't get lost as they go through lots of menus. So part of that was also kind of migrating from all of the pop-out windows and stuff like that that had previously existed for Mechwarrior Online, trying to make things a little bit more concrete and usable, rather than having elements that like pop up and disappear and layer and all those sorts of things.
Grace Fox VRE is asking, is the UI interactive with the environment? I would say it is interactive with the environment because we are using a lot of like I said before, floating elements, and these floating elements interact, and and they are basically blending with the environment. If that's makes sense.
I think also maybe he means that gameplay wise, like whether it's PPC, ECM type effects on the HUD, there definitely is some of those.
Yeah, we've got some very cool hologram stuff that I am super excited about when it comes to UI meeting the real world. So that'll be super neat. I hope people like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Other than Mechwarrior Online, what would you say has been the biggest inspiration for the overall UI experience? There's a lot of stuff out there. It definitely in terms of kind of more modern minimalist game UIs. Ours is very unique in that we have to combine, that lo-fi military aesthetic, as was mentioned before, into it. But I think we've had lots of opportunities to look at what other people have done and get ideas. I don't know, Victor, do you have?
Yeah, we basically have a lot of inspiration. We talk about games all day, and we see a lot of inspiration daily. But yeah, definitely one of the biggest inspirations for this part of the UI, I would say it's basically games like Alien Isolation, and I can mention other titles like Battlefront, for example, Battlefield. Lots of floating elements that are in basically all the modern games that you see right now. They are floating elements, and they're white elements.
Yeah, I think a lot of the showcasing, like the Division 2, they do a lot of art showcasing and 3D showcasing alongside their UI, and it can be really, really good looking, especially some of the more diegetic features. So that would probably be another one as well that's been pretty inspirational for us. But we definitely it's important that we have a very unique mood to a lot of the UI, since none of them have the elements, and a lot of other games out there don't have the history that MechWarrior has. So we really want to try and incorporate a lot of that.
Lone Wolf, aka Inedemir, the guy is asking again, how is damage being taken by mechs going to be presented in the HUD? We have paper dolls for each of our mechs, vehicles, and VTOLs. So every of them will be affected, and they will have a damage doll.
Um, Goflin asks, I would like to see elements of the UI represented in the physical cockpit, things like the kill counter and stuff like that. I think most of our stuff is largely in the diegetic interface, that's kind of over top of the cockpit for the most part. That's where the vast majority of the information is going to be conveyed, just because there's a lot of variance between mechs in general, for their actual like in mech, physical cockpit kind of thing. So and there's a lot of mechs, so most of it's going to be conveyed through the interface, I expect.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Hey, Emily, can you explain to people what diegetic means in terms of the game and UI?
Oh, yeah, sure. So diegetic, I'll try and explain it in the way that I understand it. I don't know if this is a technical definition, but diegetic is when you have an interface that it like actually kind of extrapolates into reality. When you get a 3D interface that it looks as though it's interacting with what's in the world, almost as though it's physical, as if there's a physical actual screen there. So often it'll be things like if the UI has depth, or let's say you pick up your smartwatch and bring it up to your face, and then it projects a whole bunch of things into midair, and you can move them around in the actual world. That relationship is a diegetic relationship for an interface.
So it doesn't just purely exist for the story, exists for the game character and in the world as well as for the player.
Exactly. Yeah. And it isn't just it isn't just stickers placed onto your bike helmet kind of thing. It's more interactive and more real in the world than that, and borderline physical.
I would add on that, yeah, diegetic meaning more like it adds perspective to the element of the UI that you're seeing. If you're, for example, you're seeing a menu in, I don't know, in 90 degrees, the menu will be displaying in 90 degrees, basically.
Yeah, and I'd say I watched a GDC talk on diegetic recently, so that's why I asked you to explain it. One of the things that the guy that gave the presentation was the guy from Dead Space, and the idea that the UI just exists in the world, and the player's reading the world rather than reading an overlay.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
Dead Space is super inspirational for that. Their health bars and stuff like that are very cool. And that's one thing I can say for sure with the mechs in general when it comes to taking damage and stuff like that, recognizing mech damage. We not only do we have, it's important to have indicators in the actual UI in the cockpit, but you can really see and feel stuff when you're piloting a mech for Mechwarrior 5. It's very much like, you get an arm blasted off and that sort of thing, and it's like, oh damn, my arm is gone, right?
Yeah,
So you
totally.
really feel it, which is great because it's never been about like having a health bar for your mech. It's always about components and giving you that feeling that you really are piloting a piece of mastercrafted machinery. Yeah, so that's important, absolutely.
Yeah, totally is fun. Adventures 5 is asking, is the HUD similar to MWO? Yes, I would say it's very similar to MWO. We haven't changed basically anything. We have a compass on the top. We have a comms panel. We have a objective panel. We have a mini map. We have the weapon loadout on the right. And yeah, basically it's very similar to MWO, and it's enhanced, I would say.
I would argue that it's completely the same and completely different at the same time. Like, it looks and feels very differently, but the positioning of a lot of things are similar, and functionality is
Yeah, it's
similar as
also
well.
we went through a lot of prototyping, as you guys know. They saw something fairly different on some of the very original Mechwarrior 5 videos, and I guess I would just say sorry, I think I cut out. We tried some different things there, but in some ways, you just have to realize maybe that sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to make it different just for the sake of making it different, and even if it means it's worse.
Absolutely. Improving the wheel, not necessarily redesigning it.
Yeah.
It can be challenging to recognize that. Like I said before, the game feel is very different. It's much like heavier and much more involved. I feel like that ties a little bit into Coffee Giraffe's question there, which is when your mech takes damage, let's say the arm explodes off like described, does UI flicker and get staticky and anything like that with damage happening and stuff? There is some, in terms of kind of like the weapon feel and the hit feel in the game, you can really feel when stuff hits you, the differences between weapons and things like that, both in kind of sound and interactivity, is a really good feeling. We do have some of those aforementioned diegetic interactions where stuff can interfere with your HUD in the world or in the story, just to kind of give you more feel, and your comms too, which is super cool.
Oh yeah, we have good stuff. Jaden Hayes is asking, how was the UI designed to support ultra-wide resolutions while putting the important information in the center? Basically, we are developing and we are doing everything. We're working on 4K monitors, so the resolution is getting it's getting better for that, and that's not a concern right now.
Right torso critical damage. Center torso critical damage. Left torso critical.
Snake 509 asks, will we see any feedback damage from weapon/ammo destruction? And this was similar to some questions earlier, I think, as well, that were relating to paper dolls, as well as unique paper dolls and stuff like that. We plan, obviously, to have unique paper dolls for a very good portion of the mechs. if not right away, then at least in the future. And in general, feedback from that it's important that it's very, very clear. You have to understand at any moment in the middle of a fight very quickly what kind of state your mech is in. And so we've done a lot of work in regards to displaying, for example, armor damage versus like core damage on a mech. Understanding if your weapons are offline, if they've been, shot off or very heavily damaged, or if they're out of ammo. So it's been really important in the HUD to make sure that you know immediately your status as a pilot. So yes, there's definitely feedback damage.
I think there are some things that are different than that go a lot further than MWO did too, like ammo explosion, for example. It's still a work in the progress in the paper doll, but there is a specific indication of when either you or when you're shooting an enemy and that there's a ammo explosion going off, which is before you could see it visually on the mech, but not necessarily from the paper doll.
Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah, we have damage direction affection in the damage dolls. That's right. Vard is asking, will paper dolls in the UI be more reflective of target mix shape instead of the generic shape used in MWO? Yes. It will be a paper doll and a damage doll for each mech.
Unique graphically to match the geometry to a point. Like, for example, unless we could make a different decision here down the road, but like the catapult looks like a catapult one, and the enforcer one looks like an enforcer one, etc., etc., etc. Everyone has a unique paper doll. However, at the moment, like catapult has one, so there isn't like a specific one for like the catapult K2. So that's a step we haven't taken yet. I'm not sure we will, but still, you're looking at least 50 plus unique paper dolls, and then unique ones for the vehicles, the VTOLs, everything.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Once I've done my AMA.
I'm thinking we might, if we have some time, we might handpick a few of the most drastically different looking variants to possibly make a paper doll from them. Like, say, the K2 is a good example. It's so different than the missile earbox one, but
Target acquired.
well, it has been 30 minutes. Like, you can take one or two more if you guys want, but we wanted to keep these a little bit shorter. We noticed the last few, it can get maybe just a little bit repetitive in the final 10 minutes, and then in particular in the evening session, there's less unique stuff to answer. So if you guys want to take one more, and then this evening we'll try to look for questions that are maybe a little different than what we answered here.
New target acquired.
One final push.
Critical damage.
Maybe that means you don't want to do one more.
Sorry about that. I was looking for one more, and people are distracting me in the office.
I'm searching too.
Nice tries on the screenshots there, guys. I think it's
What
every
about-
fourth question.
Well, let's
What
just hang
about-
on to everything then. Let's just hang on to it till tonight, and we'll take another 30
Sure.
minutes.
Acquired.
Yeah, that sounds great.
There's one last one is from Satan with 4. Will the monitors in the cockpit be part of the UI interacting with player? Yes, in a sense, we have monitors, we have different displays and different HUD elements, and this will be interactive.
Left torso.
The enemy has capped enough resources.
All right, that sounds like a good place to leave it then.
Yeah, sure.
Till this evening.
Yeah, we can continue this evening. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll
That was
see you
very cool.
tonight at 6.
All right. Thank you.
for your time. We have Emily here so far, and Victor will join us soon. Emily's a UI designer. She can better tell you her full title.
UI, UX, artist, and designer, I guess will work.
Yeah, there you go. So just ignore the closed text channel. I created a new one for tonight's.
The 6 p.m. one, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I would archive it, but I can't drag it down because of the huge amount of people in this chat. It blocks me from scrolling down. We're currently just waiting for Victor to join us before we let the text channel open up for the questions. Hi, Victor. Here we are.
Hello, Victor. We can't hear you yet. Don't forget your push to talk.
Oh, he said he can't hear.
Hello?
There we go.
Can you hear us? Hey, Victor, how about now?
Test, 1, 2, 3.
Sorry, guys, for the hold. We're just trying to fix Victor's headset.
Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal. Override
Fleet
engage.
command coming in. Capture the target area and engage any hostiles.
Target acquired. New target acquired.
Target spotted.
Sorry for the wait, guys. We're just having some technical issues with Victor's headset, but I'm sure they're working.
Yeah, it was working this morning, so it should just be
New
something
target
small.
acquired. UAV activated. New target acquired.
The enemy has destroyed Alpha.
New target acquired.
Target spotted.
Target acquired. Fuel at 25%. New target acquired.
Target spotted.
New target acquired.
Welcome back. Can you hear us now?
Spotted.
Target destroyed. New target acquired. Heat level critical.
Target spotted.
Heat
Need
level
assistance.
New target acquired.
Any luck yet?
No, unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to go
New
with just
target
you.
acquired.
And he can just try to keep
Target
troubleshooting
spotted.
and see if he can figure it out.
New target acquired.
Can you hear me there?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
New target
assistance.
acquired.
Negative.
Heat level critical. Target destroyed.
Alright, Emily, I think we'll have to start without Victor.
Okay. If
acquired.
in the middle he gets things working, then we can
Critical.
pick it up from there.
Yeah, perfect. Alright. As a note that Russ mentioned this morning,
Target destroyed.
the questions that will be getting answered will more be
Heat
art
level
and
critical.
design
Target
procedure
acquired.
oriented
New
and
target
less about
acquired.
how it
Heat
functions
level critical.
or gameplay
Target
related.
destroyed.
As
Target
Target
spotted.
acquired.
Emily is a UI designer, she won't be giving as much technical. Can I say it right this time?
25%.
Technological, maybe?
I messed it up this morning and now I can't say it anymore.
Shutdown.
Technicalities.
Target
That one.
acquired.
That's the word.
Target destroyed.
So I'll open the channel now
Okie dokie.
and I'll try to keep up with you answering the questions.
Heat level
There you go, it's open.
All right. I'll start out with Wolfos31 since he's first in the queue, ready with that question. They ask, how have you used the UI elements to add different atmosphere to different areas of the game? For example, the leopard versus the star map versus piloting the mech. And the interactions with the world, a HUD versus an interface versus the types of interfaces that you see in the real world. So if you're inside your leopard, are all they're different experiences, definitely, but they need to have sort of an overarching theme that ties them together. For sure, everything should smoothly slide from one type of interface into another. But in terms of atmosphere, the atmosphere is largely provided by so the UI is there for the functional purposes and maybe a little bit of beautification to try and simplify and get across as much information as we can in a clean and compatible, easily readable sort of way. But the art is really where the atmosphere comes in. So things that make you feel like you're actually in the inner sphere, for example, with the star map, something that makes it seem very real, like an actual place. That's one big thing that we've been working on, is I think a very unique and awesome looking star map, something that's really beautiful, and very organic, that should be very interesting and unique versus something like the HUD inside of a mech where it's going to be all about presenting the world and the fights to you, in the most legible and efficient way possible while still being good looking. Inter asks, just curious, what does the UX stand for in UI UX designer? UX is user experience, so that is the
Hello,
ease of
hello. Sorry.
experience. Oh, can you hear us, Victor?
Hey, I can hear you. Sorry about that, guys.
Hooray!
Technical issues over here. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, keep going. Hooray! Good. I'm glad you're here. So UX is user experience. So that's things like ease of use, and I guess the ability to understand what's going on in an interface without having to have it introduced to you at great length. Let's see. This is a big question, but Captain Cat asks, "Is your UI design philosophy for MechWarrior 5? What are the key challenges your UI needs to solve?" Now, there's a lot. I talked a little bit about this morning as well, about not reinventing the wheel, but only improving upon it. MechWarrior obviously has a long history of a lot of different interfaces and a lot of people that really, really love it. So one of the biggest challenges for sure is getting a balance between what people are accustomed to, what they've had used in the past, and even if it's not necessarily the best interface, maybe it has a really, really long tradition in the MechWarrior series, and trying to bring it into something new and modern that's has really good usability. We're in a very different era of games than the early days for BattleTech and stuff. So trying to combine the old and the new is definitely one of the biggest challenges for sure.
Yeah, I have to add a little bit of. Sorry, I have to add a little bit of feedback on that to that question. We really want to keep it very loyal to Mechwarrior fans, because we know that they love they love to balance, and they love to achieve things through the UI. So yeah. Emily's right on that part.
Snake 509 asks, "What design philosophies have you come up with to portray the history of the history of the BattleTech universe to new players?" All right, so BattleTech is huge. Obviously, it's absolutely colossal. It has a huge background, tons of lore, tons of story, and we've been as UI designers, we're trying to at every instance that is possible for us to give it more lore, more flavor, more universe, more story. We're trying to make sure that we can do that and to keep our lore so it's not a full-on novel in a single window kind of thing. Keep it interesting, but to give like tidbits and pieces at a time to bring people into the universe, and as they become more interested, they can invest more time into areas that they're really interested in. Like for example, the lore of particular planets, particular areas, particular systems, or individual mechs and the histories of some of the clans and stuff like that. So really giving people the opportunity, if they wish to go deeper, to do that, or if they only want to go for that surface level run and gun and the story, then they totally can.
Gum Bucket is actually asking, will the mechs have their own paper dolls like MW4, or will it be like MWO? It's not going to be like MWO. We're going to have our own paper dolls. Each mech will have their own paper doll.
KNA 5041 asks a tough question. It's kind of a generalized UI question. They say, what games would be examples of having good UIs and bad UIs? So that's a tough question, because obviously it depends on
That's a very cool question.
It is. It's a very, very big one. We were talking about some of our inspiration earlier today, and it's all about what's right for a project. And how much information you have to convey, how simple or complex ideas need to be, as well as in our case, a long-standing tradition of certain UIs sticking around for a very long time. What about some of your favorites, Victor?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one big I would say one of the biggest inspirations that I personally have is Stanley Kubrick. So uh, basically,
New target
titles
acquired.
or movies that are related to Alien
New
and
target
games like
acquired.
Alien Isolation is a
Incoming
big
missile. New
is
target
a big
acquired. Target
inspiration
destroyed.
for us.
Yeah, a good UI
New
is
target
one that's
acquired.
believable in its universe for sure, and that's one of the really cool things, in
New
particular
target
about Alien
acquired.
Isolation. And
Yes.
obviously, there's some games out there that are fully customizable, like Eve
New
and
target
stuff like that. And though
acquired.
Eve may have one of the most complicated and overwhelming UIs out there, when you get
Critical.
users with it that are incredibly experienced and incredibly knowledgeable, they can make it. They can
Target
customize it any way they
destroyed.
want. So arguably, it's a very good
New
UI, but it's
target
going to be very
acquired.
overwhelming
Target
for
destroyed.
an early player. So
New
yeah, it
target
depends.
acquired.
Depends on what you're after.
Fuel at 0%.
Yes. KNA 5041, will all parts of the UA scale well with resolution and ultra-wide displays? Yes, we are basically developing and designing on big displays like 4K. So that's something that we're working on.
Target spotted.
Moldy Cheese asks, how do you go about designing important status elements element UI such as
Acquired.
missile lock, critical damage to both you and enemy mechs, and other essential info? So that would be all the HUD related info. And essentially with HUD related info, it comes down to really, really fast readability because you're in the middle of a fight, you're paying attention to a lot of
Fuel
other
at
things, having the
25%.
ability to tell really quickly exactly how much damage you've sustained, and all the information, or dealt out, all the information that you need to know has to be there really, really fast. And some color indications as well as movement indications are really important for those kinds of things. We had some questions this morning about color blindness, and that's something that
Target
we've tried
destroyed.
to make sure that we can account for with stuff like that because that's very important. That it's visible for everyone. Um,
Yes, accessibility without having to go to the settings to set it up, basically.
How Fennec VR or Ver asks, how will the MechLab UI differ from the one players are accustomed to in MechWarrior Online, or is MechWarrior Online's MechLab the base for the one we'll see in MechWarrior 5? The MechLab is a very challenging interface. It's something that has obviously a ton of user info all in one place, as well as it needs to be incredibly accessible, incredibly fast to use for experienced users, but also not too overwhelming for newer users that are just going into it or just testing things out. Um, it has a similar direction, I believe, to MechWarrior Online. We've tried to improve and change a lot of things. Again, the color blindness and accessibility being really important, as well as ease of use and the ability to get details about, let's say, weapons or loadouts really quickly, so you can decide what you want on your mech. Has been an important part of that for us. So yeah.
Yeah, basically that answer is answering Smurfing Hill's question as well. How will UI of ammo types, if applicable, be demonstrated? Yeah, we're working on that, and we are doing basically like he's asking is a tooltip of the status of each mech, and there will be like lots of damage and lots of status of each mech for that. It'll be pretty clear in a very uh, BC screen, if that makes sense.
Shay asks, if there are times when you're commanding AI or non-AI teammates, how do these commands get issued? How will non-AI teammates see these commands? What type of commands can you use? It's that's mostly more of a technical question, but I can say that the UI is involved with commanding AI, and things, fundamental commands, obviously, as well as the fact your AI can act independently of you as the individual player to try and coordinate attacks, stuff like that. Movement functions, all those sorts of things are definitely important for being able to command through the interface for your squad mates. Raining Fire asks, the cockpit UI shown at MechCon was completely flat straight on. Has this changed since then? The weapon loadout in Mechwarrior Online is angled, adding depth, and I think it looks much better. Diegetic interfaces,
Yes.
which is that angled look that you're talking about, interfaces that really feel like they're part of the universe, is obviously it's super important to making you feel like you're in a mech. So it's something that we would really, we would strive to achieve, certainly. I think our mech is more our interface is more diegetic than it was when it was shown at MechCon. So
Yes, definitely. It had changed completely, basically.
let's see. I'm just scrolling through, taking a look at what we've got.
Yes, I'm here. V, will the MechLab and MechSelect screens be significantly different, improved over what we have now in MWO, or is that essentially the foundation for MW5? Basically, there's a big inspiration from MWO, but I would say the MechLab and the Mech Select screens will be changing basically completely. We mentioned this in the morning. Basically MWO is based on moving panels, whereas MW5 will be like completely floating panels and transparencies, which makes everything like the navigation and the states will be completely clear and completely different from MWO. Sorry.
Target spotted.
KNA 5041 is asking, what has been the most challenging aspect of working on the UI for Mechwarrior 5? I would say definitely the iconography for basically all of the systems that we need to compel. And also, I would say one of the biggest challenges, personally speaking, is the MechLab, because the MechLab basically is implying everything for balancing your mechs and customizing the mechs as well. And you have to think, visually speaking, you have to think in every single damage state, in every single positioning, every single difference between weapons, if it's an energy weapon, if it's an equipment, or if it's another thing. Basically, that would be the most challenging part, personally speaking. How about you, Emily?
The MechLab was definitely very challenging. I found that trying to adapt elements to be as intuitive as possible, I mean, that's just an important part of UI design in general. And so going through systems and sorting them in a way that we can make them as intuitive, as beautiful, and as smooth as possible, with as much information as possible at the same time, where it needs to be, is definitely very challenging. One of the very fun aspects of it, though, is that we've been able to take a departure with Mechwarrior in general to bring things into sort of a more modern era, especially in terms of usability and visuals, into making things look a little bit sleeker, more visually appealing, and really letting the art pop to bring you and take you somewhere new, kind of thing.
Yes, totally.
New target acquired.
Pepsi Gamer asked a while ago, are the in-battle HUD UI and the Mech cockpit's interior developed hand in hand, or is the UI and the UI in the Mech cockpits just part of the Mech art? I'd say it's closer to the art end, though our battle HUD relies on being adaptable into any kind of mech, and there's such a great variance of mech cockpits, field of view, and kind of general feeling where your weapons might sit in the mech, that it's really important that our HUD is transferable in its function to every different kind of mech, which is, yeah, that's been a big highlight for sure on the HUD design.
Acquired. Heat level critical.
Target spotted.
Override shutdown. New target acquired. Heat level critical.
Target spotted.
Heat level critical.
We're experiencing some losses. Don't get sloppy out there.
Snake509 asks, will we see the UI change slightly when we progress through the timeline to represent changes such as the grade F of the memory core? There are changes that progress through the UI over time, in general in the game. I think a lot of them are going to be largely focused, obviously on the availability of mechs, depending on the time, the era, the setting, all that sort of stuff. As well as major changes to the inner sphere, since we have time passing in this game.
New target
And obviously
acquired.
there's a lot of faction changes in the overall map, so those are some of the really big UI changes for us to focus on.
New target acquired.
Shay asks, when shopping for new mechs, what sort of checkboxes do we have for simplifying the shopping experience? For example, can I only look at medium mechs? What sort of limits are there for this? When it comes to mech inspection, this is something that is super important. The ability to pick and choose very carefully what kind of mechs you want to buy, try out new things, and really get an idea for the type of experience that you're going to have with the mech before purchasing it through the game. So we definitely have some pretty heavy duty inspection elements that we would like to have enabled for users as they become more experienced with the interface and want to know more before purchasing mech. So that will be important.
Disco7, what's the biggest improvement to the cockpit HUD from MWO to MW5? Biggest improvement, I would say, is clarity, and I would say usability as well. It will be pretty clear. Also, like we mentioned before, the accessibility of color um, and iconography as well. It will be basically that, and yeah, smooth HUD basically for MW5.
Yeah, we're hoping to get a HUD that can really focus on the experience of actually piloting the mech, so you get to really feel, your throttle and stuff like that. So yeah, to have the ability to get a lot of that game feel through both through the UI and through the actual piloting of the mech itself, is super important, and that's something that there wasn't as much weight behind before, but now is something that Mechwarrior 5 has a fantastic direction with, I think. Nevade1 asks, will there be mini quick access UI consoles around the dropship free walk around level, or is everything handled through a main home screen UI? I'm pretty sure we can answer this. The dropship itself is a place that you can be and you can interact with interfaces through. Or you can choose to do it through a faster, more traditional interface experience, which would, closer to going through sets of menus and stuff like that. But they can be accessed through a sort of hub world experience, which really helps bring them into a more real place. Gunbucket asks, what is encompassed with the UI? So the UI, as user experience in general, UI UX, is the presentation and the interaction that the player has with the game. Essentially, almost every screen is touched by UI in some way or another, and this is probably true for most games. So it encompasses any button interaction that you have, any click interactions that you have, anything to do with the menu, as well as anything to do with a HUD. Any information that you have incoming or outgoing is often largely put through UI. And if you can assist a UI with more realistic feedback, like for example, let's say you're hit with a laser and your UI flickers and the lighting in your mech changes and you really feel the hit. That assists UI, but UI fundamentally is the primary method of communicating any kind of information or change or knowledge that a player needs to know at any time. So it's very important and fundamental to an overall game experience. When it comes to less HUD stuff, so the HUD being within the mech and more UI stuff, the less you notice the UI and the more natural that it is to use, the more easily it gets its information across, the more usable and the better an interface will be. So generally, we strive to be not noticed but experienced, essentially. U10EKD asks, what is the most standout feature function UI thing that you're proud of worked on and implemented so far? And this may just be coming from our work in general.
That's
But
a
so
great
far, my
question.
personal favorite. Oh yeah, fantastic question. My favorite by far has been maybe not by far, but at the moment has definitely been getting to work with the inner sphere map because it's a beautiful space, and space itself, I feel like in a lot of the BattleTech universe, it's kind of beauty and natural beauty of the cosmos has not always been saturated all the way through. So to get to have an opportunity to really work with making space maps gorgeous has been my favorite at the moment. How about you,
And
Victor?
Emily's doing a great work on that. Um, my favorite thing, I would say, other than the paper dolls and the damage dolls, which is very detailed work, is basically tracing every single mech and every single variant. Um, I would say the MechLab. The MechLab is very technical, but also it has to be very minimal, and also it has to be aesthetic. So basically, um, putting all these three ingredients together is very hard.
Higher up, Rocket Runner has asked, will MechWarrior 5 have a damage compass like MechWarrior Online? If so, is there anything different about it? I think we have a relatively similar damage compass. It's important to know which direction damage is coming from, obviously. It's been designed differently, but I believe it serves the same function through our current designs. So.
So we normally have. Oh, sorry, Victor.
No, it's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we've shortened the AMAs to 30 minutes, but we'll let you guys answer a couple more since we started a little bit late.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I have another 10 minutes maybe.
I can answer.
5041. Sorry, go.
I can answer. It's Mastian1. Hello, hello.
What's up? Oh, I think we've lost him. Okay, well, I'll answer KNA's question. Oh, no, you still here?
I don't know, something happened here. Go ahead.
Okay, KNA 5041 asks, will the HUD flicker or have other effects while taking damage from PVC other weapons? KNA will not be disappointed. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Gunbucket says, what rooms will there be in the dropship? How will movement around it work? How will interacting with either crew and other information we can expect from them? There is story experiences in this that happen through the dropship, as well as, actually talking with people and stuff like that. Definitely a portion of our story is told through that, and there's some importance put on the UI in terms of, subtitles, those sorts of things, especially for dialogue in general. So it is an actual space that can be moved around and interacted with, that can transport you from interface to interface, as well as changing, having characters, all that good stuff.
Yeah, dropship basically is looking amazing.
Idraki, that is not a UI question. I'm sorry. Ooh, 13 Tradesman asks, hiring Mercs UI, any comments? We have got some incredibly cool art that we get to showcase, in regards to all kinds of different Mercs from all sorts of different systems. So that is super cool. And we have definitely through the UI done our best to highlight a lot of their really cool differences, different skills, different types of pilots and stuff like that. To really give you that experience of hiring and specializing your squad.
Piece Cold Machine Gun. Mechwarrior 3 has the best UI, hands down. It looked like a modern HUD on an aircraft. I really agree with you, and you won't be uh, uh,
Oh, come on. You're telling me you don't like the original Mechwarrior in which they just have a picture that you press to go to the location? It's perfect for localization. You don't even have to translate any text.
sorry, I was doing something, but the audio failed. But yeah, you will be surprised. Piece Cold Machine Gun.
SSS Kira Usagiyama says, any other areas of interaction outside the ship and combat? Yes. We obviously have maps, things like comms outside of combat, tons of information and lore and history and stuff like that that is passed through the UI down to the player to help them inform them and make decisions, based on where they would like to travel next and what sort of experiences they want to pursue, both within the storyline and outside of the storyline.
Yes, there's interaction everywhere. Snake 501, any chance of showing off the UI improvement soon? I think there will be a chance very, very soon.
Keep your eyes out. Will repairing Navid A1 asks, will objects in the world space have the possibility for having UI elements assigned to them, repair consoles, hacking, scanning, etc.? That's a very large question just because it that could apply to a lot of things. Like for example, being able to parse information out of star maps to see what kinds of missions or directions you might want to go in. As well as, when you're actually deployed on a mission. And all the kinds of objectives involved with that, often have UI elements assigned to them because an efficient, faster, and very clear way to get a message across to a player, what they're going to be doing.
Gun Bucket is asking, will we see the other hired pilots around the dropship? Yes, we will. You will have interaction with them, and you will see everything basically interacting within the UI.
Yeah, I think that's through UI in particular. Multi-Cheese asks, what would be your biggest UI flaw from previous MechWarrior games that you seek to improve on? Oh, there is a lot of very complex systems in a lot of the MechWarrior games, and so to try and simplify those while still allowing the option to gather really quickly a lot more of that really complex, advanced information has definitely been one of the most challenging aspects in general, in adapting the series into something new and modern. Kiryu Sagiyama asks, besides mission payouts and salve, will there be other options to gain C bills within the UI? Obviously, we're going to have a lot of like market systems that would be involved with trying to use your cash flow in the way that you desire. So it's largely mission focused economically, I believe. But there's opportunities for buying and selling and stuff like that. ASD Fleas asks, will there be toggleable settings for more complex/simple UI for different players' needs? Um, this is a tough one because obviously it requires a degree when you're designing interfaces to make sure that things are as intuitive as possible, while still allowing that higher usability. So I think a lot of our focus on our designs, especially now that we're moving away from sliding panels into more floating elements and more permanent elements and stuff like that, is that if the player desires to skip over a lot of the more complex information and to just get the job done that they're ready to do, they can do that. But if they desire to look deeper into it, then it's a really, really easy, really fast process that is as comfortable and as quick as possible for the user, so you can get back into the action with what you want as soon as possible.
All right, you guys, a couple more, and then we can call it. If there are more that you wanted to answer.
Just scrolling up, taking a look here.
Yes,
You guys
I'm
want to
here.
fire your last questions?
Scrolling.
Super Weagle says anywhere to have a beer while discussing strategy and tactics with co-op players. I believe that would probably be your drop ship. Hanging out before you launch. There has been Raining Fire asks, has the cockpit UI color changed since the blue at MechCon? Is there the option to change it? I can address less of the HUD and more of the general UI. We've certainly been going in a little bit more of a monosaturated direction with some stuff to try and let colors really pop when they need to, basically. So especially for things like weapons, loadouts, mechs, those sorts of things, and letting those sort of making them easier to read.
Yeah, readability.
Okay, I think that's probably about as far as we've gone.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys
Yep.
so much. That was a great AMA again.
Yeah, thanks guys. That was lots of fun.
Thank you for coming
Thank
out,
you.
answering the questions, and asking.
Thanks for
Bye,
the questions.
Yeah, and thank you for your patience as well.
Bye. Thank you.
And all that. So.
Yeah. Sorry, the technical issues. Adios.
Adios.
Thank you guys. See you next time.